Happy Monday, and welcome to another episode of Cases That Should Have Gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. Today, we're talking about red light camera tickets. Cases that should have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. You wouldn't think that a case involving a ticket for a red light traffic camera would be something that needed to go to the Supreme Court of Canada. After all, the consequences for a camera ticket are generally pretty slim. But there is a real uncertain question of law that arises as a result of red light tickets that affects every province across the country and has the potential to impact thousands of cases involving the litigation of red light camera disputes. And so that's why this case is of national importance. The issue in the case, which arises out of Quebec, in a case where a woman got a red light camera ticket, comes down to one of the interpretation of the offense as far as the mental fault element is. There's been a long-standing debate in Canadian law about whether red light offenses are offenses of absolute liability, for which only the defense of necessity applies, or offenses of strict liability, for which the defense of due diligence applies. Due diligence means that a person can argue that they took all legal avenues possible to them to avoid the harm caused, and that they exercised reasonable judgment in following those avenues but were unable to do so. Circumstances, for example, where somebody ran a red light but because their brakes failed and they weren't able to stop. That would constitute the defense of due diligence, potentially, in a case. And so whether or not you can argue that you tried to stop and were unable to do so is a big issue, especially because lots of red light tickets involve people who were trying to stop but for whatever reason weren't able to come to a stop in time. And this is the question that the court had to determine. Ultimately, the courts all the way along determined that the offense was one of absolute liability, meaning that no due diligence defense could be brought. And this is the confusing aspect of the case. I mean, how can it be that people can suffer the consequences of a traffic ticket that is essentially dangerous driving without having the opportunity to say, I was really trying not to commit that offense? It puts people in a difficult situation, particularly where the consequences of red light tickets can lead to the prohibition of their license, the suspension of their driving privileges, and ultimately charges for violating rules around prohibited driving. The Supreme Court of Canada had an opportunity here to settle a long-standing debate and to provide final clarity for Canadians on this issue so that there could be no more debate about it, and so that people who get red light camera tickets or red light tickets generally understand what the law is. Supreme Court of Canada judgments are more widely reported and read than judgments from traffic court divisions all across the country, and so this would have the opportunity to educate the most Canadians in the simplest amount of time and the easiest fashion for everybody. So while a red light camera ticket might not seem like the type of case that should go to the Supreme Court of Canada, in my opinion, it is a case that should have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but unfortunately didn't. Cases that should have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Cases that should have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. I'm Kyla Lee at Acumen Law. Thank you to Brazen Bull Creative for putting together these videos. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends.